Welcome to Let's Talk ADHD with Alex High, and today Marlee Boyle. Marlee and I met at the 2024 ADHD conference. She presented on sleep, and if you've been following my stuff for a while, you know I'm passionate about sleep. So Marlee, welcome. So glad to have you here.
Thank you, Alex. I'm excited to be here.
So Marlee, what is your ADHD story?
It's a convoluted one. So I was only diagnosed with ADHD about 2 years ago, and it actually came from working in sleep. So I struggled with sleep my whole life, and through a variety of things, I ended up into a career in healthcare. And doing shift work was horrendous for me. And I went to school for 7 years and I thought, like, I'm not even going to be able to work in this career for 7 years because I'm going to have an expiration date because I can't maintain this shift work. And ironically, got a job across the country working at a sleep disorder clinic and started working with sleep disorders and working in sleep therapy and absolutely fell in love with it. It was awesome. I think people that go into healthcare, they get into it mostly because they want to help people and help people get better. And our system here in Canada is sometimes you don't get to see people get better. It could be better, bit of a sick care system, and it just wasn't what I had anticipated working in healthcare would be like. And then so working in sleep and getting to see people and help people get their health back on track, improve the quality of their lives, and actually see changes and create relationships with clients. That was a dream for me and I loved it. And so I worked with sleep deprived people for about a decade. And one of my clients ended up being an ADHD coach. And we really connected, really enjoyed his company. He was so smart and had so much wisdom. He was an entrepreneur. And I had expressed to him that I would someday like to go out on my own away from the clinic and start my own thing. And so he was a mentor of mine, actually, and a business mentor. And at this point, I still had absolutely no idea I had ADHD. Now, once I got diagnosed, he was like, I saw your ADHD from a mile away. I had no idea at this time. And so through his mentorship, I did end up starting my own business. That's how we founded SleepWorks. And I was working with, his name is Keith, and I was working with him through business. And he asked me to project manage something for him with his business because he employs all neurodivergent people. And he was like, I just need a neurotypical person to be on top of this. And I went and spent some time with his group. And it was like day two. And I was like, oh, I relate on so many levels with these people. I think I might have ADHD. Growing up, I did well in school. I was type A person. I had some what my family would describe as quirks, I guess. And those were more of ADHD symptoms, leaving my purse all over the country and forgetting certain things, struggling with sleep, just struggling with executive functions in general. And then working with sleep deprived people and who struggle with their executive functions was just a natural progression for me to start working with people with ADHD. And so I've partnered up with an adult ADHD clinic here in Canada, and I do a lot of sleep therapy for people with ADHD and neurodivergence.
So you mentioned struggling with sleep early in your life, and now you work on helping people with their sleep. What was that journey like?
I mean, I struggled with my sleep from the time I was a little kid. I remember not being able to go to bed at a normal bedtime. I was a night owl as a kid. Now, in hindsight, knowing what I know about people with ADHD and sleep problems, is that it's very common for us to have that delay in our sleep and delay in our circadian rhythms. So we're natural night owls for most of us. But I struggled so much, and it just got to the point where my mom would just be like, "Don't go to bed. You can just stay up with me." And she'd bring me out to the couch and she'd watch TV, and eventually I would just fall asleep out there. And then I was pretty small. She would just carry me to bed. There's a lot of times throughout school when I couldn't get up in the morning. I'd be up really late, wouldn't have been able to fall asleep, and my mom would wake me up for school in the morning, and the first thing I would say is like, I didn't sleep last night, or I only got a couple of hours, and she would actually let me stay home from school and then take me to school lunchtime or in the afternoon, early afternoon, which was wonderful. And I got to university and everything fell apart because I didn't have my mom helping me. And so I struggled really bad with insomnia there. And in hindsight, like I know exactly what was going on, but I struggled so much with insomnia, couldn't sleep. It got pretty bad, and I ended up taking sleeping pills, which didn't, I mean, they helped temporarily, but they didn't fix the problem. And then after university, went to work in the hospital and started that shift work, and it was debilitating for me. I couldn't sleep during the daytime after a night shift and couldn't flip my schedule back over, and it was just creating so much anxiety, and it was making things really unenjoyable for me. So I got lucky, and I applied for a job in a sleep disorder clinic and a sleep disorder lab, which was kind of considered at that point in my career, like where your career goes to die. Sleep isn't a very like sexy part of healthcare, I guess. So a lot of my mentors and preceptors were discouraging me from going into sleep because you can lose a lot of your clinical skills and things like that, but I just couldn't maintain. So I moved across the country and started working a sleep disorder clinic, and I got very lucky. I worked on a small team with a couple of board certified sleep physicians and a sleep technologist, and I just absorbed everything and was very interested in it and just wanted to learn everything. And because it was such a small team, I got the special training that normally I wouldn't get in my line of work, where I was able to do insomnia therapies and understand the full spectrum of sleep disorders, do daytime therapy for them. And that's actually where I started learning, like, okay, I have sleep problems as well, and started applying some of the things that I was learning for myself and changed my sleep that way. Now I will say I am a really good sleeper.
As someone who has had struggles with sleep and has figured it out somewhat mostly, I can say it is a night and day difference before and after, like when you figure it out. So I'm
It
really
really is.
happy for you. If someone out there is watching this video and they struggle with sleep, what's the first thing you would tell them to do?
So if they're struggling with sleep, I mean, one of the basic things that you'll hear for advice is sleep hygiene. So sleep hygiene is just a set of habits that can improve your sleep quality. Now, the thing about sleep hygiene is that it's just widely given out as advice, which is it's not bad advice. It just doesn't fix chronic sleep disorders. So if it's you're having a couple of nights here and there, maybe you just want to optimize your sleep, practicing healthy sleep hygiene, like optimizing your bedroom environment, so making your bedroom nice and fairly cool, cooler than most people regularly keep their bedrooms. So quite cool, completely dark, nice and quiet, or with some white noise or some consistent sound. Those types of little modifications can improve sleep. And if you're having just like a short-term struggle, it can be beneficial. But if you're somebody that has struggled with sleep on a chronic basis, sleep hygiene, you've already tried it all. Sleep hygiene has been given to you as advice, every time you've mentioned that you're struggling with sleep. And so I think it's pretty validating for a lot of people to know that sleep hygiene, there's no research that supports that practicing healthy sleep hygiene will fix a chronic sleep problem like insomnia. And insomnia, it's generally affecting us for chronically for over 3 months. So it's not a short-term issue that can be just fixed by making your bedroom a little cooler. It's actually doing cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia. And so that is the preferred first line treatment for chronic insomnia. It works really, really well. It's highly effective, even for people with ADHD. Of course, there's some modifications that can be made to make it a little bit more successful for people with ADHD, but it's certainly a highly effective treatment. The research says that it works on about 80% of people, which is for effectiveness, that's high.
So, CBTI, chronic behavioral therapy for insomnia. What is that?
What
What are,
is CBTI? Good
yeah.
question. So CBTI is multi-session treatment. So generally between like 5 to 8 sessions. I do mine over 6 sessions over 6 weeks. And it's basically a set of different strategies that address the perpetuating factors of insomnia, which are thoughts and behaviors. So, the first segment of cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia is cognitive restructuring. So, addressing some of those ingrained thoughts that we have about our sleep. When we have gone to bed and struggled to fall asleep or struggled to stay asleep or be satisfied with our sleep on a chronic basis, we can have some really human reactions to that and start worrying about our sleep. And so we start worrying like, well, I'm not going to be able to function tomorrow. I'm going to have no executive functions tomorrow. I'm going to be cranky. How am I going to get these things done? Or I'm going to get sick. And we start to have these really normal human reactions to not being able to sleep. But what happens over time are those what we call negative sleep thoughts. They actually create more anxiety, right? So they perpetuate the insomnia. So we start worrying about not sleeping and then we don't sleep. So it's addressing those thoughts in the moment and kind of just tweaking them to be a little bit more realistic because our anxiety can create these thoughts that feel very truthful to us, like, I'm never going to sleep again, which in reality, that's not true. We will sleep again. And so just restructuring some of those thoughts. So identifying them in the moment when we're starting to worry about our sleep and kind of taking the pressure off. So, for example, if I'm laying in bed tossing and turning and I'm starting to feel frustrated or anxious about the next day, instead of being like, oh my gosh, I'm never going to be able to fall asleep tonight, instead we would restructure that thought to, I've gone nights without sleeping before and I've been okay the next day. I'll be fine tomorrow. And it just alleviates a bit of the pressure that we put on ourselves to try to fall asleep. And then, so we do a cognitive restructuring, and then we get into a bit of sleep scheduling, or what people sometimes would refer to as sleep restriction therapy or sleep consolidation. Now, with my clients with ADHD, I generally don't restrict their sleep because they're already usually restricted. We're already usually not getting enough sleep to begin with. So just regulating that sleep can be really beneficial. So setting a wake up time that you're going to keep consistent 7 days a week, and then using a sleep diary to track our sleep over a period of time and see how much sleep we're actually getting, and then limiting the amount of time that we're spending in bed to try to consolidate the sleep that we're getting. So if we're spending maybe 10 hours in bed and we're only getting 6 hours of sleep, that's a 60% sleep efficiency. And we like to get that a little bit higher so we can sleep through the night. So instead of spending 10 hours in bed to get 6 hours of sleep, we would reduce that to maybe 7 hours in bed to get the 6 hours of sleep. And then we start moving that bedtime back each week based on their sleep diary to add more sleep time until they're getting the recommended amount of sleep, which for adults is somewhere between 7 and 9 hours. Then a third component, we look at relaxation practices. So we teach different relaxation practices. And again, this can be modified for people with ADHD. I find that a lot of my clients with ADHD do really well with body-based relaxation rather than just trying to do things in their mind and quiet the mind that way. So we teach a variety of different tools to relax and get them to practice that during the daytime before they're trying to use it to fall asleep or fall back to sleep. Then we move it to bedtime and that practice is maintained. We do a technique called stimulus control, which is basically reestablishing the relationship with your bed. So through repeated experiences of getting into bed, tossing and turning and being frustrated or stressed that we can't sleep, our brain makes that association with our bed. Like, oh, this isn't where I go to sleep. This is where I go to worry about not sleeping. And so we try to limit that. And so we employ a rule called the 20-20 rule. So if you're in bed for 20 minutes or longer awake, you got to get out of bed for about 20 minutes and do something boring without turning on any lights until you feel sleepy again for roughly 20 minutes and then return to bed. And so that helps actually break the cycle of us trying to sleep. So that's the tricky thing about sleep. The harder we try, the more it backfires on us. So when we're just lying there trying to will sleep to happen, it can actually just cause more cognitive and physical arousal in our body. So we can't fall asleep. So the idea is to kind of short circuit that process, remove yourself from your bed, stop that association, and come back to bed when you're feeling drowsy. So your bed starts to be that cue for drowsiness. So similar to Pavlov's dogs, when he would ring the bell and feed the dogs, then eventually he could ring the bell and the dogs would salivate because it would cue hunger. You want your bed to become a strong cue for sleepiness and grogginess. That's one component. And we do a bit of sleep hygiene at the very end. So once people are actually able to fall asleep, stay asleep, and sleep a little better, the last session we cover sleep hygiene techniques. So optimizing the sleep that we are getting. And then we cover a bit of relapse prevention. So how do we prevent ourselves from going going back down towards these habits that led to insomnia. So that's essentially the program in a nutshell. So it is more than sleep hygiene, and sleep hygiene really is positioned, at least in my program, is positioned at the end, and I think most clinicians position it there because when people find their way to a sleep therapist, they've tried the whole list of sleep hygiene things, and it can be just frustrating to start there. So we finish there.
This question may not be a thing, but I'm going to ask it anyway. When you're doing CBTI and you're putting so much attention on sleep, does that ever, I don't know, backfire and like cause you to think too much about sleep?
Actually, that's a great question. I'll say that can happen. It's certainly a risk, but it's temporary. So, for a lot of people, if they've struggled for a long period of time, and especially clients with ADHD, generally it's been a lifelong struggle. We're not necessarily lying in bed thinking about our sleep and worrying about our sleep. I'm just a bad sleeper. I'm not going to dwell on it. I'm not even going to think about it. I just know I don't sleep. And so, when we start doing cognitive restructuring and we're asking people to identify their thoughts about sleep, it's like excavating feelings around their sleep. And so there can be, for some people, a temporary spike in anxiety around bedtime when they're starting a CBTI program. But it is temporary because we're creating a new neural pathway basically by restructuring these thoughts. So our nervous system isn't immediately going, oh no, I'm not going to sleep tonight, and perceive that as a threat. So it can temporarily backfire in a way, but as long as, we reassure clients that it is just temporary, it's just while we're excavating those thoughts from us have pushed them way down over the years as a way to cope, really. And so sometimes it can happen, but it is temporary, and generally people do get through it within about a week.
Okay, that's good. Because
Yeah.
I know for me, like if I try and put my thought attention on something, it really gets there. And so I was just curious if that
Yeah.
ever backfires. So, a question I like to ask on this show is what's something unusual you do because of ADHD? Your work with people with ADHD or in your day-to-day life?
It's something that I think has been really actually a good way to cope with some of the ADHD symptoms. And so this is more of a sleep strategy. My neurotypical friends, they are like always like, "Are you serious about doing this?" Is wearing amber lensed glasses. So as a lot of neurodivergent people are, I'm light sensitive, and that's just light, temperature, sound. We can be sensitive to all of those things. And so shutting off our brain at night can be really challenging. And there's so much light in our environment in the evening. The sun goes down, we turn on lights. And for most of human existence, we haven't had electricity and screens and all of these things. So our brains have not evolved with all this artificial light. And so when the evening happens and I'm taking in, screens and work and all this artificial light just from having electricity, it really perpetuates that kind of not being able to down regulate in the evening. So I can feel tired from the day, but I'm not feeling sleepy. And so that's where I wear amber lensed glasses that look like this every night for a couple hours before bed. I have a pair that look like safety glasses that my friends really think it look odd, but this is something like I cannot live without, as a bit of a technique, if you will, rather than a strange behavior. To my friends, it's a strange behavior, but it certainly is very beneficial with helping that down regulation in the evening. And basically what it does is it filters out the artificial light that tells our brains it's daytime still, and stay stimulated. So I'd say the amber glasses would probably be like the most obvious thing that my friends would say, why are you doing that? But then I do a lot of the typical things too. Like it takes me 3 days to do a load of laundry because there's too many steps. Of course, those things, but I generally consider those the normal parts of ADHD.
So the amber tinted glasses, are those different from blue light blocking glasses? And what's the difference there?
So, blue light blocking glasses got very popular right around the pandemic with everyone working from home and in front of screens. And a lot of companies developed the clear lenses with the blue light filtering technology. And while I do think that those are really beneficial for eye strain and eye fatigue, I don't think they've been tested thoroughly for sleep. And
Mm.
so, in sleep medicine, in research, they've been using amber lenses for years and years to see if it can affect our melatonin production and timing of our sleep. And so, amber is a little bit different than the blue light filtering technology in the sense that amber is going to block out more than just the blue light. So, blue light is the shortest wavelength of light that is very strong and tells our brains, oh, it's morning, because we would get that short wavelength off of the sunshine in the morning. Amber also blocks out white light, some white light, and green light as well, which are also short wavelengths of light that also impact our sleep and keep our brain stimulated. So a little bit just more effective. And because they're dimmer or darker, they're just filtering out more light in general
Mm.
than a pair of blue light blocking glasses. But yeah, blue light blocking glasses are great if you're in front of the computer all day. They just might not help that much with sleep.
So, as we kind of get towards the end of our time here, anything you would like to say is sort of like a message to the people watching?
Yeah, I think that, my main message for people with ADHD and that struggle with sleep is it's not a personal character flaw. We're not just bad sleepers. We don't get slapped with a life sentence of insomnia or bad sleep just because we've been diagnosed with ADHD. There are some really effective habits and tools and strategies and treatment that can be modified for people that struggle with their executive functions or struggle to make behavioral change that are really effective things, and we don't have to keep just struggling with our sleep. It's so ubiquitous among people with ADHD. I think like the stats say like it's about 80% of people with ADHD struggle with their sleep. And even that seems low to me, but I'm not meeting with a lot of people that aren't struggling. But certainly, it can become, we beat ourselves up over it. I have lots of clients that are very like high achieving individuals. They're like, I have 5 degrees, but I can't get my sleep fixed. And it's not a personal flaw. It's our biology and our brain neurology is a little bit different, and we just need to approach it a little bit different. And props to you for finding your sleep formula that works for you. But it really is about that, finding out, what helps me downregulate in the evening. How do I shut off my brain? How do I get sleepy and not just tired at the end of the day? And using the tools that can make a big difference for us, because having a good night's sleep when you have ADHD is like literally the difference between a mountain and a molehill the next day.
Mhm.
It really makes all the difference for our executive functions, our emotional regulation, working memory. All of those things can certainly be really profoundly impacted. And if we're trying to manage our ADHD symptoms, sleep has to be included in part of that because it so profoundly affects how we feel and function. So just that there is help out there. It's not that we have to just live with being a bad sleeper or having bad sleep, that there are lots of things that we can do, and it's not just sleep hygiene. There's some really tangible strategies and pragmatic things that we can do to improve our sleep that often we can just set and forget and not have to use our executive functions to remember to do all of these things every night, so it doesn't become such a struggle on a regular basis to maintain. So that would be my message for people is if there's hope.
And I think that's kind of the message I like to give around sleep is there's hope.
There's
So,
hope.
Marlee, thank you so much for joining us. The company is Sleepworks, correct?
You got it.
And
Sleepworks.
how can people find Sleepworks?
If you go to www.sleep-works.com, that'll take you to our website and you can get in touch with me there. I do free 15-minute consultations. I do a monthly free webinar about sleep and ADHD, and we have lots of resources there on our website that are available for free as well.
Thank you so much for joining us, Marlee, and thank you for watching.